Welcome to Tech Primers. This is the continuation video from the previous example which we saw with respect to Spring Reactive Programming. So if you haven't seen that particular video, go ahead and see that because this is just a continuation video from the previous video. So you might not understand any of it if you are just starting with this particular video. So I would strongly recommend you to see the Spring Reactive first video where we created a project with employee event, employee repository, and if you see here, this is the project structure. So you can get the code from the GitHub repository. So I have pushed that to the GitHub repository. You can check out the code from there as well. If you haven't succeeded in creating the previous example, you can check out from there and then you can continue with it. So what I'm going to show is I'm going to ditch the Spring MVC framework of how we created a REST endpoint here, how we merge stuff here, right? So I'm going to ditch this Spring MVC way of pushing the data using the resource. Instead, I'm going to use the new style, which is going to be the router function style. So that is what Spring has created in the Spring 5 release. So in the Spring 5 framework, Spring has created something called router functions. Okay, I'm going to use that to inject some data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new config file, right? So I'm going to create a config folder. I should have moved these also there. So let's do that. So I'm going to say reactive config, right? And I'm going to annotate it with configuration so that Springboard by default loads this. So inside this I can create a number of beans. So I'm going to say a bean, and this bean should be of type router functions. So router functions are the new interfaces or the new implementation inside the Spring 5 framework. So if you see here, router function is a new interface. Okay, so let's go inside router function and see what is that. So you have lots of methods here, and the object which router function expects is of type server response. This server response is the interface from the Spring Web Reactive project, where you have a functional style of approach for building your responses. So you don't have to go behind the imperative style where we had been doing lots of coding on imperative approach. So now Spring has come up with the reactive approach for returning using the server response. So we are going to we are going to have a router function, and we need to create some routes, right? We need to create some routes. So in order to do that, what we need to do is we need to create some routes. So using the router functions, so if you see here, there are two things. One is router function and there is a router functions. Okay, so router functions are nothing but abstract classes, which are like, there are similar functional abstract classes where you can use that for as a helper function basically. So these are just helper functions where you can use these for doing some operation. So I'm going to use the router functions because in that you can add the route. So I'm going to add a route. And what kind of route? So a route is going to be a is going to have the implementation of the REST endpoint. So I'm going to add the REST endpoint. So in Spring MVC, what we did is we add the request mapping or the get mapping to add it. So here we are going to use something called request predicates. Okay, request predicates is another abstract class where you just say I need to do a get, okay, or a post or a put. You can do that. So in our case, we are just having getter methods. So I'm just going to say get, and I'll add the routes like this. So I'm just going to say rest employee slash all, right? And the second argument is nothing but the data which we pushed, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to create a separate what do you call a class. Okay, we are going to create some separate class called router handlers, so that using that class we can get some data here. So I'm going to say router handlers dot all, right? I'm just going to do this so that we can get the data directly, right? So I'm going to create this class here. So this is going to be some service class, right? Or a component. We can have anything. I'll just create it outside, right? And I'm going to annotate it with add component so that this gets injected before and auto works out of the box, right? So what do we need here, right? So we need to create a get method. So I'm going to create the method called getAll, okay, and this needs to return an object of type mono. So if you go inside this route, it is going to expect something called a predicate and a handler function, right? Because that is what we are going to write. So we are writing a handler function or the implementation basically that we need to handle with, right? So I'm going to create some implementation. So let's go inside all, and this needs to return a mono, right? And the mono should be of type server response because that is what that guy expects, right? So I've just added some mono, okay, and this gets the request which is called the server request because that is what comes to us, right? So from the server request we have to get the data because the id is not passed, or the all or the argument is not passed at all, right? We need to get the arguments and the values, right? That's how we get it. So we get the request and the response. So we got the request and we are going to send the response. So in order to send the response we have to create a response object, right? So server response is an abstract class, right? Sorry, it's an interface, and it has lots of default methods. So now frankly it's like it's very confusing now between the interfaces and the abstract classes because there are so many utility methods inside interfaces. If you see, notice here I just got confused with the okay, right? So for example, if I see this, it looks like an interface or a utility method, but it is an interface. It looks like an abstract class or a utility method, but it's an interface. So yeah, it's very confusing with the new Java style, right? So and with Java 9 it's getting more confusing. So so let's not talk about that here. So I'm going to create a server response.ok, right? And we need to send a response back, right? So the response is going to be inside the body, isn't it? Right. So what do we need to send in the body? So what kind of message we need? We need to return an object, and let's say I'm just going to do null, and also what is the type of object. So I'm going to say employee, so that is the type of object which we need to return, right? And we need to create the data, right? So we need to have the repository here, Mongo, what is that, employee repository, because that is where we need to get the data from dot find all, right? So because this is an all, so I need to get a find all. So this is going to return a data of all the employees, right? And what we need to do, what else we need to do? So we just need to return this particular thing. So I'm just saying find all body, and how do I close it? Unnecessary semicolon it is saying, but it is a semicolon here, right? Oh, okay, there is an unnecessary braces here because this is an argument to the body. So if you notice here, this particular what we are doing here in the get all is we are using the server response and we are doing a functional style. So this is a builder style again. So you just say server response dot okay. Once it is okay, which is going to return 200. So once it is okay, I'm going to return a body. What is that body going to have? It is going to have all the employee details, okay? Using the find all, I'm just getting the mono, and then I'm converting into object of type employee, and then I'm just pushing it as a mono because that is going to be the response. Okay, so this is how we push the response back. And if you notice here you can directly use the response because this here we are going to have the server request, okay, and that server request is now going to get handled like the request here. So okay, so that is what is going to happen here, right? So instead we can even use this way, so you don't have to write these lambda expressions, complex things. So I'm just going to say router handlers colon get all, right? And I'll delete these guys. Okay, and this is going to be comma. What else do I need? So this is going to be a semicolon, and I need to return this guy directly, right? So if you notice here, this is one route which we have created. I'll just move this inside here. Okay, so this is one route which we have created here, right? So we need to create multiple routes, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some more routes. So I'm going to say add some more routes so that I can work on it. So I have created one rest endpoint. Now I'm going to add some more routes. So this is as I said, this is going to be a builder type of pattern. So I need to add something called and route. Okay, and we can now start doing the same thing. So we can just say request predicate dot get, right, and rest slash employee slash id. So this is where the fun begins. So how will I pass this id now, right? So I'm going to say again route handlers, and then I'm going to say get id. That's it, right? So I need to create this get id method, so I'm going to create a method there. So and this is going to return a mono. If you notice here, it has already automatically created. IntelliJ is creating it for me. Now we need to do a employee repository dot find by. Actually, if I had written a service, I could have reused that service inside here. But I feel lazy in the previous video. But now it's just showing off, right? I'm just writing the same code again, right? Which is of no use. But yeah. So yeah, cool. It's just for the example. So don't write coding like this in your production, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the variable from the servlet request or the server request. So if you notice here, what I have done here is, sorry. So what I have done here is I've just created a path variable, and then I'm just saying it's called employee ID, and I need to pass this employee ID, right? So that's what I'm doing here. Okay. So this is going to be the employee ID. So now we need to create a server response, right? So I'm just going to say, I'll just dump this particular line, right? Ah. So I'm going to say the similar kind of thing which what we wrote here. So server response dot okay. I'm okay. Now I need to give the body. Okay. Inside the body, now I need to do the same thing. So employee dot find by ID. Okay, and it's an employee ID. Now I need to return this of type employee, right? That's it. So that is it. So if you notice here, it's all good now. So we wrote the second rest endpoint. So this is how we write the resources, like how we did in the Spring MVC. This is how we do inside the router functions or the router handlers basically. So the router function, if you see, this is how we are adding the routes here. Okay, and I'm going to add one more route. Okay, that is going to return the events for us. Okay, I'm going to say get events, and let's create the method. Same stuff. I'm not going to do anything, so it's just going to, I'm just going to copy this guy same way, right? But I did some more things here, right? Instead of writing this guy, instead of just writing the find by id, we did lots of stuff in the resource, right? Where is the resource? So if you see here in the resource, what we did is we did lots of stuff here. I'm going to just copy paste this code. So I should have done this as a service so that I could have reused it, but for simplicity, I'm just going to reuse the same code here. I'm not going to do anything here. All right. If you see, this is going to return, it seems. So this is going to return a flux, right? Instead, what we can do is I can do something like if you see what is this return, it's expecting something, right? Missing return statement. So I'll just do a return, right? And this is of type employee event. Actually, it's not an employee, right? It's an employee event, isn't it? Yeah. So that was the problem. Cool. So let me remove the boilerplate codes, spaces. Okay, if you see here, there are two fluxes which we saw in the previous video itself. We are creating a artificial delay so that we can see how the streams are working, and we are just copy pasted the same code, nothing else, just that the type is the employee event. So that is what I had to comment cover up here. So that is it. So this is how we write a router handler which can be used inside a router function. So if you see here, this is how we write a router function, right? So this is newly introduced inside the Spring 5 framework. If you notice in the Spring 5, there are router functions, there are HTTP handlers, there is mono and flux which is coming out of the box. There are much more features as well, but yeah, these are the major ones. So this is how we have to write the router function. So let's go through the resource and then just comment it quickly. Okay, I'll just comment this whole class, right? I'll just comment it this whole class, and then I'm going to run this particular program. So I already have the MongoDB running, because in the previous video we created it, right? We just started running it, so I haven't stopped it yet. Since I recorded it as a continuation, so I didn't stop it. So that is why I haven't gone and started it. Right, so that's it. The process is coming up. So if you notice here, I'll just reiterate what we did in the router function. So we had to create a router function of type whatever it is, because we don't know what type it is, because we have two different types. One is going to return employee, the other is going to return employee event, right? So and then we are creating a class called router handlers, so that it is like a service class, and from that service class we are using the methods so that we can use them inside the router functions, and these methods are going to return the server response from there itself, and it is going to use the functional style. We are for example, if it is get all, we are just saying okay and body type and whatever, and same way for get id we have to do the similar stuff. Here if you notice here, I forgot something similar as well here. So in the resource we created a content type here, right, which produces media of type event stream. So we have to do the same thing here as well, so which I forgot, now I just remembered. So we have to add explicitly the content type, so we have to add the content type here. I'm just going to say media type dot text event stream value. Okay, so whatever we had here, I think we have to do this way here. It's going to be a stream, right? So it's going, I'm just going to say text event stream, right? So we have to add a content type, and we have to add, because this is going to be the producers, right? Let me restart it so that we start neat, right? So I am just having the same code which we had in the resource. Okay, just that the way of defining the REST endpoints are completely different. Using router functions, you have to define like this. You have to define using router function. If you want to get the path variable, you have to get it manually. So I just said path variable and I got it, right? So this is how you have to get it, okay, from the router functions. So if you notice here, the server has come up. Let's quickly go through the REST endpoint and see if it is good. So localhost 8802, because that's the same REST endpoint which we had. Employee / all. So this should return all the employee, but why is it not up? Let's see what is the okay, application properties 8082. Sorry, it is 8082. So right, so yeah, we got the data. So I'm going to use the id to get the id. So if you notice that this is working, the router functions are working. We had disabled the resource. So where is the resource? I'll just show you once. So resource is commented. If you notice here, resource class is commented and nothing is working. So we are getting the data via the router functions, and if I just do this, it should get Peter's data, and if I say events, this should give the event stream. So hopefully if the event stream works, we know that the data is pushed as a part of stream. So if you notice here, this is using the reactive streams and pushing the data via the event stream. I haven't refreshed the page. This response was successful, and we are getting the data for every event, right, for every 2 seconds. So that is what we did as a part of pushing this get events, right? So this is how we use the reactive stream to create some events in the server side. So that is what I wanted to cover, and in this particular video you would have seen how to create the router function. So how to create router functions using the new router style, right? So this is the router style. Previously Spring was using the Spring MVC style. If you don't like the Spring MVC style, you can go ahead with this. You can create routes by this kind of style, where you can just add some route handlers and then tag it to them with the request whatever we received, and from that request you can just create the response using the builder pattern, and you can stuff the data into the body and then push it back to the router, right? So that is how we add the routes. So you can add routes, so this way you can see all the routes in a single place. It is slightly different from the Spring MVC style, because Spring MVCs are all like annotation based, but this is not annotation based. It's all purely functional style. It's all purely functional based, so you don't have to worry about annotations and processing those annotations and stuff like that. Okay, so that is the new stuff which got added in Spring 5. In the previous video you would have seen what is mono. So mono is like a single data stream. If you want to just have a data which is going to respond only once back, you know that it's going to be a single data, you can use mono. If you want to have multiple data to be streamed, you use flux. In our case it's going to be mono only, but it is going to be a server response which is going to return a flux of data. Okay, so that is what the server is doing, right? If you see here, it is still pushing the data. So this is going to be the server side. So this is how you create a server side reactive Spring using the Spring Reactive Webflux. So Webflux is the jar dependency if you had seen in the POM XML. So that is the jar dependency which we have, the Webflux, the Spring Boot starter Webflux, which is nothing but Spring Webflux, which is going to give all these reactive and the mono and the flux capabilities inside the Spring Boot application. Okay, so as usual, this code will be available in the GitHub repository. So I will add this as an example 2 and the other previous one as an example 1. You can go ahead and check it out. So if you want the link, it is in the description below and it will be popping up in the video as well. You can if you want to directly go through the link, you can just check it out in the description and you can check out and then try it out. Make sure the MongoDB is started, and also check if the port number is the default one, or if it is not default, go ahead and change it, right? So if you like the video, go ahead and like it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. So if you want me to make any similar video or any particular video on any topic, go ahead and suggest that in the comment section below. I'll just check that and then I'll try to do some videos on that topic, whatever you have suggested. So in the next video, what we will be seeing is we will be creating some client-side handling for these reactive streams. So what we did now is we just created the server and then it was just streaming the data, right? So in order to handle that in the client side, how will we handle it? So that is what we are going to see in the next video. So how you can handle the stream values in the client side using this Spring Reactive client. Okay, so that's it for this particular video. Meet you again in the next video. Thank you very much.